After 3 years of silence, a letter from my dad changed everything. Before we begin the story, make sure to subscribe to our channel and never miss more incredible stories every day. My father, who mocked EMTs, wrote, "Please, save me." The envelope is thick, ragged along the seal as if he second-guessed sending it. 3 stamps, a courthouse postmark, and my name in his impatient slant. Evan I read it standing between the rig bay doors, the ambulance ticking as it cools, the smell of bleach in the air. I'm 30, an EMT who counts breaths in minutes, not stock options. He called my work glorified taxi driving the last time we spoke, 3 summers ago, after a barbecue where he toasted himself and told me I'd grow out of sirens. I never called again. He never called either, until this letter. Inside, a neat apology that lands stiff as cardboard, and below it, the real ask, a short-term loan, discretion, and help meeting regulatory timelines. His ink stutters on the word liquidity, as if the letters themselves are slipping. He says there are rumors, overblown and malicious, and that a calm head like mine could keep everything from spilling into the street. He adds that he has always supported my calling, which is a revisionist miracle. I imagine his mansion's glass staircase and the way sound echoes inside, all shine and no warmth. The station intercom coughs, then falls silent. A siren far off becomes a ribbon of sound, then fades. I should be charting vitals. Instead, I'm tracing where his pen dug into the paper on the words please and son. I used to measure myself against his skyline, his offices, his golf trophies, his noise. These days I measure oxygen saturation and the seconds it takes for color to return to a lip. My world is small, yes, but it's sturdy. I stand to lose that steadiness if I step toward him. Shifts traded for meetings, privacy traded for scandal, years of boundary building for one favor. The letter smells faintly like the cedar drawer he used for cufflinks. In the margin he drew a box around a date, Friday, and added, "Before anyone else does." I fold the paper carefully, because even a bad bridge is still a bridge, and I feel the weight of a crowd gathering on the far side. When I exhale, the page trembles like a monitor line just before it alarms. I slide the letter back into the envelope and tuck it beneath my clipboard, where it rides like live wire. I text him one sentence, "Meet me Friday, bring everything." I grew up learning his rules like traffic codes. Richard liked beginnings, groundbreakings, ribbon cuttings, first pitches, and despised the grind of maintenance. Scale or stall, he'd say, clinking ice in a glass he never seemed to finish. When I told him I wanted medicine, he heard sirens and pay caps. When I clarified EMT, he laughed so hard I learned how a smile can bruise. Small jobs breed small horizons, he told 12-year-old me after a career day where a firefighter let me try the hose. He loved the kind of money that changes opinions mid-sentence. In the family photos he framed, Lena's ballet ribbons glow, my scout badges vanish into glare. At dinner, he asked for quarterly numbers the way normal dads ask about grades. Mom left when I was 15 and said she needed air. He wrote a check and called it closure. The last time he got a fresh dig in was at that barbecue, 3 years and a week ago, summer humidity pasted to everybody's skin. "You'll stabilize strangers, but won't stabilize your own prospects?" he asked, loud enough for Aunt May to close her eyes. "Come work in acquisitions. Learn to resuscitate something that matters." I answered, "People matter." He countered, "People applaud." He raised his glass and told the crowd I was going through a service phase, like altruism was acne. He toasted his empire. Grease from ribs shone like lacquer on his fingers. I drove away in my squeaky Civic and promised myself I'd spend oxygen on patients, not performances. Reading his letter now, I feel that old bruise itch under a new scab. He says he respects what I do. He writes the word respect twice, as if repetition could soak through 13 years of contempt. He signs, "Love, Dad," then adds a postscript, "Do not call Lena." He underlines it once, as if the ink could bar my sister's number from my phone. I stare at the underline and think of the time he forbade sugar. We ate cake in the driveway. The stamp's date flashes like a pulse, and the cedar smell follows me home like a stray dog. If he forbade Lena, then Lena is the first person I call. Lena picks up on the second ring and exhales like she's been bracing 3 years. "You got it," she says before hello. He sent copies to all the children he remembers. She tries to laugh. It breaks. We were close before the money hardened around everything like sugar glass. She took a job at one of his subsidiaries, managing brand partnerships, a phrase that sounds like handshakes and invoices. He's fine, she adds too quickly. It's market noise. I ask about the postscript. She goes quiet long enough for my tea to cool. He thinks I talk, she says finally. He's not wrong. I'm walking my block, letter folded in my back pocket, when a tow truck rolls past the bodega with a black sedan I recognize from Dad's driveway. At the end of our street, a city notice flaps on a door, lien posted, delinquent taxes. The paper rattles under wind like a mouth trying to form a word. My phone lights with an unknown number, then another, then a voicemail alert. I ignore them until the same number appears with a local bank's prefix. The message is regret in a suit. A courtesy call regarding an upcoming event that may impact your family. Words so smooth they squeak. I search Richard on Instagram. Yesterday he posted a boomerang of champagne erupting, captioned onward. The likes look like confetti. The comments are knives and evening wear. It shouldn't get to me, but the disconnect makes my hands feel borrowed. On the walk back, I pass a construction site where a banner has been yanked down, leaving ghost letters that still read Richard Harlow Group if you squint. Doubt arrives right then, ugly and reasonable. Maybe this is theater and I'm the mark with the lighting cues. A neighbor asks if everything's okay. I say sure and hear myself lying. The clouds slide over the sun and the block loses its edges. Then the station sends out a push about a process server asking for me by name at the front desk. I picture a man with a stack of envelopes practicing my last name like a password. Something is moving, and it's moving with or without my permission. I turn back toward the bay. He's swaggering online while papers with my name are being served. Back at the station, I pull a double, hoping exhaustion will sand down the letter's edges. Instead, every quiet minute sharpens it to a needle. On a lift assist call, an elderly man taps my sleeve and says, "You look like you're somewhere else," which is funny because I've feared being nowhere for years. After midnight, I'm charting when the process server actually finds me. Neat tie, clipboard, my name rehearsed to sound like a favor. He hands me a sealed envelope addressed to Evan Harlow, witness. Beneath that, a second envelope with Richard Harlow, defendant. Just ask him to call, the server says, as if civility can drywall a sinkhole. I sign, shove both into my locker, and walk outside into air that tastes like coins. In the morning, I open them at my kitchen counter. The first is a subpoena to appear regarding a debt action involving one of Dad's companies. The second is a notice of deposition with dates circled like bruises. I can smell cedar from his letter on my fingertips, a ghost of wealth that never paid my rent. I picture him at some charity breakfast, fork pinging porcelain, telling people he's weathering transient headwinds, the genteel euphemism for drowning. I text Aunt May, and she replies with a line I can hear in her steady voice. Meet with a lawyer before you meet with him. I Google a dozen names, land on Carter because his site is plain and his listed cases are about facts, not fireworks. Lena calls again, whispering from a conference room. She claims the layoffs are strategic realignments, then admits the coffee vendor refused delivery. He's got this, she says, and I can tell she needs me to believe it. I tell her I'll meet him Friday at the public library's small study room. Fluorescent honesty and cheap carpet, and my pulse counts out a procedure I can't yet name. The elevator dings, and Dad's name flashes on my phone screen. 3 years ago, the exile wasn't a door slamming. It was a shrug that erased my chair at the table. After the barbecue, he stopped copying me on family emails. He told Lena I was refractory, a fancy word for kindling that won't light his showy fires. Aunt May kept my number pinned to her fridge and dropped off soup when flu ate my January, her Tupperware labeled like patience. The family split into neat columns, those who took calls from his assistant and me. So when his name lights my phone now, the past folds like a map. Evan, he says, measuring my name. Thank you for your promptness. There's a hum behind him, a room with money in the vents. I say I'll see him Friday, library study room B. He laughs, indulgent, proposes his club instead, murmurs about privacy, valet, a quiet room. Public, I repeat. Neutral ground. He sighs as if I've insisted on paper plates at a wedding. Bring your banking credentials, he adds, casual as weather. We can expedite. I answer that I'm there to listen, not launder. Silence. Then a new voice. Lena, patched in, pleading, "Don't fight. Just." Richard cuts her off with that velvet edge. "Son, I need you to be useful." The word son is his favorite doorbell. I hang up first, an old luxury that still feels stolen. After, my phone fills with texts from cousins who never text. "Saw anything online? Is it true? Are you okay?" I brew coffee strong enough to sand furniture and stare at the subpoena until the type blurs. Duty feels like a stretcher. Pride feels like a loose strap. I tighten both and try to breathe in eights until my hands steady. At noon, Aunt May knocks, carrying a folder fat with careful tabs. Aunt May sets the folder on my kitchen table like it's a small, friendly animal. Inside, blank notepads, a basic digital recorder, sticky flags, and a list she's titled "Questions We Will Not Forget." "You always trusted your gut," she says. "Make it bring proof." We review Friday's plan. She offers to sit in the library like a chaperone who reads 3 tables away. Before she leaves, she presses something else into my hand. An old key with a worn brass tag, RH office. "From when your mom cleaned out the attic," she says. "He kept a downtown suite even after moving headquarters. Habit or ego?" I tuck it into my wallet and head to work. Mid-shift, Lena texts a photo of a second phone on Richard's nightstand with the caption, "Don't tell him I showed you." The case is clear. Under it, a slip of paper with an email I don't recognize. Westmoreland at PM. Me. I send a test from a burner account I keep for swap meet deals. It bounces with an auto-reply thanking me for using Project Mail. A default notice arrives by courier at the station addressed to Richard's holding company, but the courier hands it to me because I'm a Harlow and conveniently corporeal. There's a line about cross-collateralization that glows like a warning light. After dinner break, I type the shell name into state records and find a registered agent I've seen in more than one headline about peppercorn offices. The comments in a forum call it reputation band-aids. I print the filings, highlight addresses, and circle dates that read like a countdown to someone else's fire. The downtown building's lobby directory still lists Richard Harlow Group in gold. The lobby smells like lemon and old paper promises. The guard barely looks up when I sign the visitor log as E. Harlow. The surname is a skeleton key here. The elevator creaks me to the 8th floor, where the hallway carpet has the stubborn cleanliness of places that outlive their budget. The key clicks. The office opens into stale air, and a calendar stopped 2 months ago on a Thursday. On the desk, a neat row of pens, an empty crystal bowl, a notebook with impeccable loops that are not Richard's. I photograph everything and start pulling drawers. I find a stack of cash advance receipts from a private casino tucked inside a folder labeled catering. Dates: March 3rd, March 21st, April 14th, May 2nd. Amounts: $9,000, $9,000, $8,500, $9,000. Just below the threshold that triggers extra paperwork. I take pictures, heart in my mouth. In the credenza, an external drive labeled quarters. I pocket it and feel like a thief stealing from a thief. The wall clock ticks louder the longer I stay. In the outbox tray sits a stamped envelope addressed to a P.O. box in Nevada, return address blank. Inside, a cashier's check copy with memo, equipment guarantees. I check timestamps. They don't match Dad's public travel posts, where he was supposedly in Switzerland clinking glasses to New Horizons. On the way out, I ask the guard if the office sees much traffic. He says, mostly delivery guys and a woman who looks like a storm with hair. The last note on the whiteboard reads, "Lena, meeting, move 2Q3, and my stomach drops like a miscounted step. In the elevator, the external drive buzzes against my phone like a heartbeat. Back home, I plug the drive into an old laptop I keep offline for exactly this kind of trespass. The folders are organized with the smugness of someone who thinks order is truth. Inside quarters, spreadsheets named with innocuous nouns, garden, maps, seating, each opening into ledgers of deposits and withdrawals tied to numbered accounts. A pattern emerges. Wires to a processor in Curacao labeled entertainment, then transfers back through a domestic brokerage that masks source as client reimbursements. Another folder, promises, holds PDFs of personal guarantees for loans taken by subsidiaries that have no revenue and no employees, bearing Richard's long, handsome signature. There's a subfolder called Family that makes my stomach roll. Inside are scanned copies of deeds. Our old house, Aunt May's bungalow, Lena's condo, each used as collateral on a master line of credit through a private lender I've only seen on glossy brochures. My name appears on a contingent authorization line with a signature that tries to be mine and fails in the R. The stakes crystallize. If one loan trips, the lender can come for the houses. A note in the margin reads, "Bridge until quarterly." Bridge until when? The why is still foggy, but the what is an unlit room full of gasoline. I tape a timeline along my wall with EMT tape and label it like a trauma chart. Mechanism, injuries, interventions, outcomes. I stare at the deed scans and feel the oxygen leave the room. I call Carter's office, and the receptionist's voice is the sound of water finding level. He slots me for a consultation that afternoon. In his conference room, the chairs are plain and the tissues are within reach, but not spotlighted. Carter listens without interruption, then says, "You do not lend money. You gather proof. You do not sign anything. You record everything." He slides across a consent form for recording in our state and a template for a demand for disclosures. If he truly wants help, he'll provide bank statements, loan agreements, and a list of liens. If he won't, then you already have your answer. We plan the library meeting. I bring a printed list. He brings charm and vagueness. I bring the recorder, visible, lawful, humming. I text Lena to attend under the pretense of mediating. She replies with a thumbs up and a string of anxious ellipses. Aunt May offers to sit in the open stacks, knitting a scarf that looks like patience. I pack a cheap folder with copies of the worst documents and leave the originals with Carter. On my way out, he adds, "If he mentions offshore, ask for FATCA compliance letters." Watch how quickly the conversation changes. I go home, make a checklist, and practice reading questions without flinching. By midnight, my apartment looks like a crime board built by a paramedic who prefers labels to hunches. The library's fluorescent lights buzz as Richard's shadow fills the doorway. Richard doesn't come alone. He brings Lena like a ribbon on a grenade and an assistant whose smile looks tax-deductible. He tries to hug me. I shake his hand. "Public venue," he says, surveying the stacks with a little shudder. "How civic." We sit. I click the recorder on the table. He notices, pretends not to. I ask for statements, lists, liens. He talks about legacy, community, and how much he's always admired first responders. He deploys memory like confetti, your first little league hit, and I let it fall uncollected. Lena squeezes my knee under the table. Her eyes beg me to be a son, not a witness. Richard keeps his voice warm until I say the words personal guarantees. The warmth evaporates. He leans in. Family means flexibility. I hold his gaze, ask for FATCA letters. His assistant drops her pen and says they'll circle back. I slide across my disclosure request. He signs a copy to look generous and pockets the original. I hand him another to sign for me. He laughs, returns it unsigned, stands. "Dinner tonight," he declares. "Bring Aunt May. We'll be civilized." At the restaurant, he orders for the table, tells the waiter I'm indecisive, raises a glass to my children's loyalty. When the check arrives, he disappears to take a call that never ends. The manager extends credit like a spotlight that always finds the stage. Then Richard leans close and murmurs, "Sign tonight or lose her condo." I sleep 3 hours, wake mean, and decide kindness without boundaries is just fuel. I book a meeting at Carter's office with a bank officer he knows, neutral, procedural, fluorescent. I invite Richard, say it's for a consolidated plan, and copy Lena. Aunt May brings muffins because she believes sugar steadies nerves better than speeches. Richard arrives 5 minutes late, wearing contrition like a tailored coat. Carter's handshake is dry weather. We begin with identification, then I lay out the agenda, verify debts, confirm collateral, establish a sequence for relief that doesn't set the rest of us on fire. The officer projects a screen. Carter asks for statements. Richard produces summaries that are to statements what perfume ads are to truth. I slide in copies from the drive. The officer notes mismatches in dates. Carter asks about Curacao. Richard says the word entertainment 5 times in 4 sentences. We request FATCA letters. His assistant says she'll circle back. I play the recorded line from dinner. Sign tonight or lose her condo. And the room temperature changes. Richard tries a new tactic. Anger, the old engine. You would weaponize paperwork against your own father? He demands. The officer calmly explains how liens work when collateral overlaps family property, and the word foreclosure lands like a dropped wrench. Richard smiles thinly and says, "Then let's bring everything into daylight." He doesn't bring daylight. He brings a flashbang. When the USB of everything plugs into the bank's machine, the projector fills with what he hid by fragmentation. A chain of numbered accounts routing through a brokerage that packaged gossip as invoices, a casino credit marker under a shell named Garden, promissory notes guaranteed by family properties, and calendar invites for meetings he swore never happened. Carter narrates like a weatherman in a storm. Here is the front. Here is where it collides. The officer scrolls to a spreadsheet titled Seating, where seats are loan tranches sold to friends with promises of outsized returns. You turned favors into securities, Carter says softly. You sold applause, I add, voice steadier than I feel. Richard's mask slips. He blames market manipulation, regulators, me, then Lena for leaks, then Aunt May for souring the boy against ambition. The officer points out forged initials near my name. I read the curve of the R that isn't mine and feel heat climb my throat. Richard calls it a clerical error, an easy fix, everyone does it, which is the anthem of men who build fires and call them kitchens. No one nods. Carter asks if the Curacao processor reported under FATCA. The assistant admits they paused compliance. The projector hums like a hive that's finally awake. Richard points at me and says, "You've just destroyed our family name." The days that follow are bland rooms with sharp consequences. The bank freezes certain lines. Notices go out to parties whose names I learned from place cards at holiday dinners. A process server returns, but this time not for me. Lena moves in with Aunt May for a while, filling the guest room with garment bags and silence. Online, the champagne boomerangs slow, then stop. I answer calls from numbers that begin with apologies and end with warnings disguised as advice. At work, a supervisor asks if I need time off. I say I need schedules and pulse oximeters. A blogger emails questions. I forward everything to Carter, who gives me a sentence I can use. No comment pending ongoing review. I don't sleep much. When I do, I dream of elevators that won't choose floors. Richard leaves me a voicemail that begins with son and ends with traitor. The word son fractures like ice dropped in water. The county site updates. A lean attaches to the mansion. The family thread, muted for years, pings with cousins denouncing gossip, cousins asking for advice, cousins asking for money. I swap a shift so I can attend one more meeting downtown and walk past a billboard being stripped. Underneath, 3 older campaigns grin like confessions we were too dazzled to read the first time. Then Richard sues to void my recordings and disqualify Carter entirely. We answer the suit with a motion that reads like a fence. The judge declines to gag the facts. Carter's eyebrows barely move, but his knuckles relax. I start therapy on Thursdays, where a woman with kind eyes asks what loyalty means when it costs oxygen. I tell her about sirens and signatures, about how pride sounds like applause until it sounds like a fire alarm. Aunt May and I make rules for helping that fit on one page. Any assistance goes through escrow, no personal guarantees, no cash. Everything in writing, non-negotiable. We list steps for Lena too. Independent accountant, separate phone plan, her own bank. She resists, then admits the quiet after applause is terrifying, and we sit in that quiet until it stops echoing like an empty hall. I start running again, pre-dawn loops where the city belongs to bakers and people with dogs that wear sweaters. The mansion goes on the market. The listing says sun-washed, which is a better lie than most. Richard tries new strategies, sudden tenderness, old photos, rage with soft edges. I reply with the same 3 lines, disclosures, escrow, compliance. He stops replying. My hands stop shaking. Color returns faster to lips in my rig. Or maybe I'm just noticing it again, counting to 10 while the world remembers how to breathe without spectacle. Then a plain envelope arrives addressed to me in Richard's handwriting. The second letter is smaller, cheaper paper, his slant a little slower. He writes that he hates lawyers, hates banks, hates losing, hates silence most. He does not apologize, not really. But he encloses a list of accounts and a signed consent to share records with the bank officer. He calls it closure. I call Carter, who calls it finally a door. I set the letter on my table and stare at the coffee ring blooming on the corner like a small eclipse. 3 years ago, I wanted a father who could be proud and present. Now I want the kind of quiet that doesn't require performance. Dignity, I've learned, is a job with repetitive motions. You say no, you say yes to conditions, you document, you breathe, you repeat. Money is a megaphone that doesn't improve the song. Love is what you do when the music stops. If you're listening and your pride is burning down your kitchen, open a window and call someone who carries water, not matches. If your family asks you to sign away your future to save their past, ask for paper, for daylight, for names that match on every line. I am not a hero. I am a person who can count breaths and minutes and, now, signatures. The hopeful image I keep is Aunt May's porch light, left on even when no one's expected, a small circle of certainty you can walk toward without asking permission. Tomorrow I'll bring the letter to the bank and choose daylight again.